Thunder rumbled over the city. Rain fell so hard it blurred the view through the tall glass windows. The boardroom was silent except for the heavy breathing of two people who stood at the head of a long table. One was Marcus Hale, known across the country as the sharpest mind in business, also known for his cold heart. The other was Aaliyah Coleman, an attorney who had fought her way through every obstacle life threw at her. She was the only person who had ever made Marcus doubt his vow never to love again. Aaliyah's hands shook as she clutched a stack of legal papers. Her eyes were bright with tears, but she refused to cry, not here, not in front of the board members who watched them like hawks. It felt like everything was about to collapse. Their marriage, a marriage that began as a cold agreement, now stood at a crossroads. Marcus was at risk of losing his company. Aaliyah was at risk of losing the only man she had ever loved. In the corner stood Paige Whitaker, Marcus's ex-fiancée. She wore a smug smile, as if she had come back to claim what she believed belonged to her. The storm outside flashed white light across her features, making her look almost triumphant. With a single folder of stolen documents, Paige had stirred up enough confusion to make the board question Marcus's judgment. And if Marcus lost control of his own company, everything he and Aaliyah had fought for would be gone. Thunder shook the windows again. Aaliyah's voice caught in her throat as she stared at Marcus. She still felt the warmth of his touch from the night before, still remembered the whispers they had shared when there were no eyes watching. Now those whispers seemed like they belonged to some other world. They were back to being strangers in a room full of judgment. Marcus's dark eyes met Aaliyah's. She saw fear there, and it broke her heart. He was a man who had sworn never to let love break him again. But in this moment, he looked so close to broken. The tension was thick enough to drown in it. The entire board waited for Marcus to speak. Paige waited too, her arms folded, wearing a grin that said she had already won. Marcus slowly turned his gaze from Aaliyah to Paige. Then he looked down at the pages in front of him, pages that had the power to ruin both his company and his marriage. Lightning lit up the entire room. Marcus opened his mouth to speak. Aaliyah held her breath. And that was the moment everything changed. Before the storm, before the heartbreak, everything had been neat and orderly in Marcus Hale's life. At 35, he was already a millionaire with a reputation that matched his bank balance. He owned Hale Innovations, a technology firm known for pushing boundaries and securing big contracts around the world. But what set Marcus apart from other wealthy men was his very public vow. He claimed he would never fall in love again. 5 years ago, Paige Whitaker had betrayed him by stealing trade secrets from his company and running off with a competitor. Marcus had stood before the media afterward, looking cool and composed, and declared that he was done with romance. From that day on, all his energy went into his business, and he never showed warmth to anyone. At least, that was how it seemed to the outside world. Meanwhile, Aaliyah Coleman had her own life in the legal arena. At 28, she was already a rising star in corporate law. With calm confidence, she could stand before a judge or a conference table and never waver. She worked at Anderson Boyd, a law firm that specialized in business mergers and big company deals. She was known for her sharp mind, relentless focus, and a strong desire to protect her family's legacy. Her family owned Coleman Shipping, an old company struggling to keep up with modern times. They had the roots, but they needed better technology to handle new market demands. One evening, Aaliyah was told to visit the Hale Innovations headquarters to meet a client. She arrived at the tower of glass and steel, her heart pounding. She had never met Marcus in person, only heard rumors about his coldness. Yet she had no choice. Her father's business needed a partnership, and if they did not modernize soon, Coleman Shipping would fall apart. Aaliyah stepped into the sleek conference room on the 40th floor. The walls were lined with awards, and the entire space smelled of money and power. Marcus Hale was at the head of a glass table. He wore a charcoal suit, and his hair was groomed back in a style that gave him a serious air. When she entered, he stood, his expression unreadable. "Miss Coleman," he said, extending a hand, "thank you for coming." His voice was deep and oddly soothing. Aaliyah had prepared herself for rudeness or a dismissive tone, but his politeness surprised her. She shook his hand, feeling the coolness of his touch. "Thank you for seeing me," she replied. "I appreciate the invitation, Mr. Hale." He motioned for her to sit. "Let's discuss how your family's shipping business might partner with Hale Innovations." Aaliyah felt a flutter of hope. "Yes, let's talk numbers and possibilities." She noticed how direct he was, never wasting a single word, though he seemed polite. She sensed a wall around him. There was no hint of softness, no mention of personal details, just pure business. After an hour of conversation, Marcus closed the folder in front of him. "Coleman Shipping has the transport routes we need," he said. "Hale Innovations can provide the technology on paper. This could be a powerful merger. I'd like us to work out a deal as soon as possible." Aaliyah looked at him carefully. "We have a few urgent situations in my family's company. A direct merger might be complicated, but a joint venture could help. Still, we'd need financial support to upgrade our ships. I don't see how that will happen quickly unless we do something big." Marcus tapped his pen on the glass table. "What if we found a way to combine more than just our business interests?" She frowned. "I'm not sure I follow." He hesitated, as if weighing his words. Finally, he said, "You know, I've sworn off love, that's public. But business alliances sometimes require personal ties, especially in old family-run fields like shipping. I have certain investors who would be more comfortable if there was a strong bond between the companies." Aaliyah realized what he was hinting at. "Are you suggesting a marriage alliance?" Marcus kept his gaze steady. "Yes, it would be a contract, strictly business. We'd stay married for a set time, long enough to merge our assets smoothly and calm the concerns of old-fashioned investors. After that, we can part ways." Aaliyah felt her stomach flip. She had heard about arranged business marriages, but never thought she would be in one. Yet the numbers in her head told her that Coleman Shipping needed a major boost. If they did not partner with a modern tech firm, they would be swallowed by the competition. "My father loves the company," she murmured. "He put everything into it." Marcus nodded. "I understand what it's like to protect a legacy. You can think of this as a strategic move." Her heartbeat thundered. She had spent her life fighting for her father's approval, trying to prove she was strong enough to keep the family name alive. If she said no to Marcus, Coleman Shipping might sink. If she said yes, she would be tied to a man known for his coldness, and she would have to pretend they were in love for the media. But then again, she did not believe in fairy tales. She had been hurt before by someone she trusted. Maybe this made sense. Maybe this was a good way to stop hoping for real love and just make a business arrangement that benefited everyone. "I'll need to review all the terms," she finally said, lifting her chin, "and we'll need a clear exit strategy." Marcus offered a small, thin smile. "Of course, I have no interest in emotional complications." "Neither do I," she lied, ignoring the small ache in her chest. "Let's settle this like professionals." And that was the beginning of the deal. Neither Marcus nor Aaliyah knew how much it would change them both. The wedding took place a month later. It was, as Marcus described, no love, no romance, just a smooth, elegant event designed to reassure investors that the two families were now bound together. Aaliyah's mother fussed over a white gown. "You look so beautiful," her mother said with tears in her eyes, "but I wish this marriage was for love, not business." Aaliyah felt a sting in her chest. "Mom, you know this is what our company needs. I'm doing this for all of us." Her mother sighed. I know, dear, I just want you to be happy. They arrived at a small chapel in the heart of the city. Only close family and a few business associates were present. Rows of white flowers lined the aisle. Aaliyah tried to block out the sense of unreality that came with walking toward a man who was to be her husband in name only. Marcus stood near the altar wearing a dark suit that matched his unreadable expression. His eyes met hers, and something flickered across his face, surprise maybe at how she looked in the gown. But then the flicker was gone, replaced by the same polite coolness. The vows were brief. They repeated the words required by law. Aaliyah heard her own voice but felt oddly distant from it. When Marcus slipped the ring on her finger, she tried to catch some spark in his gaze, a sign he was moved. If he was, he hid it well. She told herself it didn't matter. There was a small reception afterward. Investors mingled, congratulating them. Marcus stayed by her side, placing a light hand on her back whenever a camera turned their way. The touches felt more like signals. Look at us. We are a happy couple. Her father beamed. Her mother dabbed at her eyes. Marcus's own mother had passed away years ago, and he had no siblings. He moved through the room with the same smooth confidence he used in the boardroom. Soon the day was over. They were declared husband and wife, and sent off in a limousine to spend their wedding night in Marcus's luxurious penthouse. That night they stood in the foyer, the tension thick. Aaliyah slipped off her wedding shoes, letting them drop with a soft thud. You can take the master bedroom, Marcus said quietly. I'll use the guest room. She paused. Are you sure? This is your home. He shrugged. Our arrangement states we do not have to share a bed. I'm not interested in anything beyond what's needed for appearances. She felt a pain. She wasn't sure why disappointment tugged at her heart, especially when she had agreed to a loveless marriage. All right, she whispered, turning away. Alone in the master bedroom, she gazed out the window at the city lights. Her reflection stared back at her in the glass. She was a married woman now, but she had never felt more alone. She pressed a hand against the glass, wondering if this was the price she had to pay to keep her family's legacy afloat. The days that followed were busy. Aaliyah and Marcus had countless meetings about shipping routes, software upgrades, and marketing campaigns. They often attended events to show the media and investors that their marriage was real. A few times, they even posed for pictures at charity galas. Everyone commented on how they seemed like the perfect power couple. But behind closed doors, they lived like polite strangers. She had her own bedroom and spent late nights reading law books or reviewing contracts. He locked himself in his home office, building new partnerships or working on research that only he and a handful of experts understood. Late one evening, Aaliyah finished a call with her father regarding the next shipping schedule. Her eyes were heavy with fatigue. As she stepped out of her room, she spotted a light on in the kitchen. She followed it to find Marcus seated at the dining table, laptop open, a cup of coffee growing cold at his side. She lingered in the doorway. You're still up. He glanced up, his eyes shadowed. I couldn't sleep, too much going on at work. She nodded, feeling an unexpected tug of concern. You look exhausted. Maybe you should get some rest. I could say the same about you, he said, gesturing at the circles under her eyes. She let out a faint laugh. Touché. For a moment, neither spoke. The only sound was the gentle hum of the fridge. Then she walked over, hesitant, and sat across from him. Is there anything I can help with? Work-wise, I mean. He studied her, as if trying to figure out if she was sincere. Actually, yes. I'm having trouble with a new legal standard in Europe regarding shipping technology. I could use your advice. She was glad to be useful. Tell me. They spent the next hour talking about regulations and import laws. She explained details in simple terms, and he asked questions that showed his intellect. There was a strange sense of closeness in those moments. They were still discussing business, but a new warmth crept into his voice. After they finished, she shut the laptop with a sigh. "Marcus, if you don't mind me asking, why did Paige betray you? I mean, it's all over the media that she stole your firm's secrets, but why?" He stiffened, and she regretted asking. His face turned to stone. "I guess my trust made it easy for her to do what she wanted. She sold my ideas to a competitor. That's all there is to it." Aaliyah heard the bitterness in his voice. She wanted to say something comforting, but she had a feeling it would only make him retreat. So she reached out and placed her hand gently over his. "I'm sorry that happened," she said softly. He stared at her hand, but didn't pull away. "I swore I would never let anyone do that to me again." She understood. He had built walls around himself to keep from being hurt. In that moment, she realized that behind the cold exterior was a man who had been wounded deeply. It made her chest ache for him, even as she tried to remind herself that this marriage was not about romance. "I won't betray you," she said, surprising herself with how much emotion filled those words. "I know this is a business arrangement, but I do respect you and I'm on your side, Marcus." He looked at her then, his eyes less guarded. For a second she thought he might say something heartfelt, but whatever it was stayed unspoken. Instead, he just gave a small nod. "Thank you," he said. She nodded back, and in the quiet she felt something shift between them. A single crack in his icy armor, small yet real. Even if it was just friendship and trust, it was something. And she realized she wanted more than just a business marriage. She wanted to truly know him. They settled into a pattern. During the day, they were busy professionals. In the evening, they sometimes ate dinner together, discussing the day's events. The more they talked, the more Marcus let himself relax around her. One night, after a long meeting with potential investors, Aaliyah and Marcus ended up at a fancy restaurant. Their presence caused a stir, with photographers snapping pictures of them entering together. To maintain the image of a real marriage, Marcus placed his hand at the small of her back. This time it didn't feel stiff. It felt like genuine care. They sat at a corner table, candlelight flickering over crisp white linens. Aaliyah noticed how tired he looked. He had been juggling major deals for Hale Innovations, while also helping Coleman Shipping transition to new systems. "Have you taken a break at all this week?" she asked, tapping her nails on her glass of water. He shook his head. "No, but that's the price you pay in this world. You must always stay one step ahead." She looked at him, thinking how lonely that sounded. She remembered how as a child she'd watch her father come home late at night, too tired to enjoy even a meal with the family. She promised herself she wouldn't live like that. But here she was sliding into that same lifestyle. "You're allowed to rest, you know," she said softly. Marcus gave her a wry smile. "Maybe someday." As the meal went on, she teased him about how serious he could be. He teased her back about her strict approach to contracts. They found themselves laughing. The staff, used to seeing cold business deals made at that table, glanced over in surprise to see the famous Marcus Hale smiling in a genuine way. When they returned to the penthouse, Marcus let out a tired sigh, but he looked more at peace than usual. "I'm glad we did that," he said in the elevator. "Sometimes I forget it's possible to enjoy a quiet dinner and talk about things that aren't just spreadsheets." Aaliyah laughed. "We talked about spreadsheets half the time." He chuckled. "Better than all the time." In that moment, as the elevator doors opened, Aaliyah had an odd urge to kiss him. It startled her because she knew what this marriage was supposed to be. Still, the feeling made her heart race. She forced a polite smile instead and walked ahead, telling herself it was just chemistry, nothing more. Yet late that night, as she lay in the master bedroom, she couldn't stop thinking about him. The weeks turned into 2 months. The business deal between Hale Innovations and Coleman Shipping was going well. Marcus's investors were pleased with the so-called happy couple, and Aaliyah's father reported that the shipping company was seeing profits it hadn't seen in years. On the surface, the plan was perfect, but something deeper was happening beneath that surface. Aaliyah began to see beyond Marcus's cool mask. He was generous in his quiet way. He donated large sums to charities without fanfare. He treated his employees with respect, even if he was strict, and he listened intently whenever she spoke about legal strategies. One afternoon, she had a tough case at the law firm. A major shipping partner threatened to pull out of their contract at the last second. She rushed home, her mind racing with solutions. When she arrived, she found Marcus already there, seated in the living room with a bunch of paperwork. "You're home early," she said, surprised. He nodded. "I heard about the contract issue. I took the liberty of drafting some alternative proposals." He held up the papers. "I think if we renegotiate the shipping rates and show them new tech solutions, they might stay, but you'd have to act fast." Aaliyah's shoulders sagged with relief. "Marcus, you didn't have to do this." He shrugged, looking away. "We're married now. I don't let my partners fail." She couldn't help a small smile. "Thank you, really." He glanced at her face. "You look stressed. Sit down." She sank onto the couch, and he handed her a glass of water. They talked through the contract points, going back and forth with ideas. After a while, they had a solid plan. She leaned her head back, closing her eyes. "I think this might work," she said, voice weary but hopeful. Marcus gently touched her hand. "It will, you'll see." She turned her head and found him watching her. Her heart did a strange little flip. She noticed how the late afternoon sun caught the angles of his face, softening them. For once, he didn't hide behind a cold expression. He looked open, almost caring. Time seemed to slow. They stared at each other, a quiet tension between them. Then he broke the moment, pulling back. I should order dinner," he asked, clearing his throat. She swallowed, trying to steady her heartbeat. "Yeah, that would be nice." He rose, walking toward the kitchen. Aaliyah stayed behind, trying to sort through the feelings that churned in her chest. This was just an arrangement. She reminded herself. They had set clear rules. Yet it felt like those rules were crumbling a bit each day. Everything came to a head at a charity gala they attended to promote Hale Innovations' new philanthropic program. It was a grand event at an upscale hotel. Aaliyah wore a burgundy gown that hugged her figure, and Marcus looked devastatingly handsome in a tailored black tuxedo. The moment they walked in, cameras flashed, journalists shouted their names. Aaliyah looped her arm through Marcus's, and he leaned close enough for the cameras to believe they were deeply in love. But as the night went on, she realized she was not just acting. Her heart raced whenever he smiled at her or placed his hand on her waist. Halfway through the evening, the music switched to a slow dance. Aaliyah tried to excuse herself, but a well-known reporter insisted they share a dance. Maintaining the charade, Marcus took her hand and guided her to the dance floor. At first, they danced at a respectable distance, but the crowd pressed around them, leaving little space. His hand at the small of her back drew her in. She could feel the heat of his body through the fabric of her dress. The gentle sway of the music made it hard to keep her thoughts straight. "You're very quiet," he murmured, something wrong. She looked up, meeting his dark eyes. "No," she whispered, "just thinking." "About what?" he asked, his tone low. "About how unreal this feels," she admitted. "A few months ago, I was just a lawyer hoping to save my father's company. Now I'm dancing in front of cameras with a man I swore I'd never truly care about." Marcus's jaw tightened a bit. "Does it feel so wrong?" She took a shaky breath. It feels confusing. His gaze swept over her face. Me too. Without thinking, she leaned into him. She had no idea what possessed her. Maybe it was the closeness, the music, or the months of tension. But in that moment, she felt a powerful pull toward him. His arm tightened around her and his breath caught. The dance ended, and applause erupted around them. Marcus guided her off the floor, away from the cameras, into a quiet corridor behind the ballroom. Her heart pounded. She could hear the music continue in the background, but here in the dim hallway, it was just the two of them. He backed her against the wall, his hand still resting on her waist. "Aaliyah," he said, sounding almost lost, "tell me to stop." She swallowed, unable to form words. Instead, she reached up, brushing her fingertips against his cheek. That was all it took for him to lower his head and press his lips to hers. The kiss was hesitant at first, almost gentle. Then it deepened. Her hands gripped the lapels of his tux, and he let out a quiet sound that vibrated through her. Time blurred. When they finally broke apart, both of them were breathing hard. Aaliyah's mind spun. She had agreed to no real feelings, no messy entanglements. But that kiss had felt more real than anything she'd experienced in a long time. Marcus pulled back, raking a hand through his hair. "I'm sorry," he said, voice rough. She shook her head. "Don't apologize, I liked it." He exhaled, looking relieved yet conflicted. "Maybe we should get some air." She agreed. Outside in the cool night air, they stood on the hotel's balcony. Side by side, the sounds of the gala muffled behind them. Neither of them spoke for a long time. There was nothing to say that could undo the fact that they had crossed the line. Eventually, Marcus broke the silence. "This changes things." She nodded. "Yes, but how?" He turned, searching her face. "I don't know. I vowed never to love again, but I—" He paused like he was afraid of his own words. "I think I'm lying to myself." Her heart skipped. "Marcus, I'm scared of this too." He reached out and gently tucked a curl of her hair behind her ear. "Then let's figure it out together." And that was the night everything changed for real. They walked back inside, but nothing was the same. Not the cameras, the gala, or even their marriage. They had stirred up feelings that neither could ignore. The next morning, Aaliyah woke in her own bed, but her mind was back on the balcony with Marcus. The memory of his kiss burned bright. She had no idea what their marriage was now, only that she wanted more of that warmth and honesty. She got up and found Marcus in the kitchen sipping coffee. He gave her a tentative smile that made her heart flutter. They talked quietly about the gala and the slow dance. They both skirted around the obvious truth. There was something between them, now something real. Then the phone rang. Marcus's expression darkened when he answered. After a brief exchange, he hung up, his jaw tense. "That was my lawyer," he said. "Paige is back in town." Aaliyah's stomach sank. "Your ex, why?" "She says she wants to meet with me," he explained, looking troubled, "but I'm sure it's about money or some angle to get attention." Aaliyah frowned, pushing away a stab of jealousy she had no right to feel. "Are you going to see her?" Marcus hesitated. "I think I have to, if only to find out what she wants. I'd like you to be there." She blinked. "You do?" He nodded slowly. "Yes, we're married and Paige needs to understand that. Also, if there's a legal matter, I'd like your advice." Aaliyah's chest filled with warmth at the trust behind those words. "All right, I'll come with you." That afternoon, they arrived at a sleek downtown cafe, the kind with glass walls and minimalist decor. Paige was waiting at a table stirring a latte. She looked up when they entered, her smile tight. She was dressed in designer clothes, her hair perfectly styled. Marcus took Aaliyah's hand as they approached. Paige's eyes flicked down at their linked hands, and she raised an eyebrow. "Well, aren't you cozy?" she said with a sneer. Aaliyah stiffened, but Marcus squeezed her hand in reassurance. "We're married, Paige," he said, voice cold. "What do you want?" Paige sighed dramatically. "You always were direct." "Fine, I have new investors who are interested in a project similar to Hale Innovations. They'd love to partner with you, but under my management." Marcus's glare was as icy as his tone. "Absolutely not. The last time I trusted you, you sold me out." Paige shrugged. "I did what I had to do. You were too naive back then." Aaliyah felt anger burn in her chest. "Marcus isn't naive," she snapped, "but you must be, thinking he'd ever work with you again." Paige eyed Aaliyah with cold interest. "Cute, you found someone who fights your battles for you now." Aaliyah opened her mouth to retort, but Marcus spoke first. "Aaliyah is my wife," he said firmly, "and if you have something to discuss that doesn't involve any betrayal or backstabbing, speak now. If not, we're done." Paige looked annoyed, tapping her manicured nails on the table. "You've changed, Marcus. I remember a time when you let me do all the talking." His eyes narrowed. "I remember a time when I was foolish enough to trust someone who never cared about me." Paige's mouth twisted. "Ah, so you really married for love this time. Hard to believe from the man who stood before the press and swore off love." Marcus pulled Aaliyah closer. "Yes, I did, and I'm happy. So there's nothing more to say." He turned to go, guiding Aaliyah with him. Paige's sharp laugh followed them. "We'll see about that," she called. Once they were outside, Aaliyah realized her heart was pounding. Marcus was breathing hard too, his hand still clasping hers. "Let's go home," he said, voice tight. She nodded. As the driver took them back to the penthouse, they sat close, the tension of that encounter running high. But despite the stress, Aaliyah felt a strange sense of unity with Marcus. He had chosen her side in front of Paige, and that mattered. It was no longer just an act for the cameras. He had claimed Aaliyah as his real partner. From that day on, Marcus and Aaliyah grew even closer. They stopped acting like strangers in the penthouse. They worked together on new business strategies and shared dinners that stretched late into the night. Sometimes they talked about their pasts, though never too deeply. One evening, after a long day, Marcus found Aaliyah reading on the sofa. He joined her, sitting close enough that their shoulders touched. She set aside her book, and he reached over to take her hand. "I've been thinking," he said softly, "about what Paige said, that I've changed." Aaliyah felt a nod of concern. "You have changed. You're more open now, and that's a good thing." He studied her face. "You made me question my vow for 5 years. I thought that vow protected me, but I see now it just cut me off from everything that mattered." Her heart fluttered. "I know what it's like to be afraid," she said. "I once believed love was impossible too, but then I realized we can't live without it, not fully." Marcus slipped an arm around her shoulders. "I think I'm beginning to believe the same." Neither of them labeled their relationship that night, but they curled up on the couch watching the city lights. Aaliyah felt safe in his arms. She wondered if she was foolish to hope for something real, but then he pressed a gentle kiss to her temple, and she decided it was worth the risk. Chapter 9: The Storm. It happened on a day that should have been perfect. A big deal to secure Coleman Shipping's future had just been signed. Marcus was thrilled because it also benefited Hale Innovations. They decided to celebrate with dinner at a fancy restaurant near the water. But as they dined, the sky outside turned dark with thick clouds. By the time they finished dessert, thunder rattled the windows. They hurried outside, sharing a single umbrella. Lightning lit up the street, revealing a tall, slim figure waiting by their car. "Paige," Marcus said in a low voice. Aaliyah's stomach twisted. Paige flicked back her hair, a smirk on her lips. Good evening. Sorry to interrupt your romantic moment. We have nothing to say to you, Marcus snapped. Paige ignored his tone. Actually, you do, you see. I found something quite interesting. She held up a folder. Documents from your father's old files, Marcus. Seems he owed some money to certain people, and you covered it up. Your board would love to see this. Aaliyah's anger boiled. You're bluffing. Paige handed the folder to Marcus, who quickly flipped through the pages, his face drained of color. Aaliyah tried to read over his shoulder. She recognized details about some old accounts hidden by Marcus's father to handle debts that were never fully settled. Paige leaned in, her voice all sugar and venom. You see, if the board finds out about these shady dealings, they might lose trust in Hale Innovations. And if that happens, your precious wife's shipping company will lose your support. Coleman Shipping might collapse without the new investment. The words hung in the stormy air. Aaliyah watched Marcus's face. He looked as though someone had cut the ground out from under him. She put a hand on his arm. Marcus, we can handle this, she whispered. Don't give in to her. Paige laughed. Can you? Because the board might not like secrets. And if these papers go public, your marriage will be seen as a sham meant to hide this corruption. People will wonder if you're fit to run your own company. Marcus glared at Paige. What do you want? The woman shrugged. We can talk business. Maybe you let me in on your next tech project, and I'll keep quiet. Aaliyah's stomach turned. This was blackmail, pure and simple. Thunder cracked above them, and rain poured down in sheets. Marcus looked at Aaliyah, his expression torn. If he refused Paige, she could ruin everything. If he agreed, he'd betray the trust of his investors and the stability of Coleman Shipping. Aaliyah took a deep breath. We'll figure out a better way, she said to Marcus. Don't give in to her. Paige sneered. You always did have a soft spot for good causes. That's why you're so easy to play, Marcus. He shook his head, rage boiling beneath his calm exterior. I will never trust you again, he said. Do your worst. Paige gave them a mocking salute. So be it, I guess I'll have a busy day tomorrow. She turned and strode away, her heels clicking on the wet pavement. Aaliyah and Marcus stood there as the rain drenched them. He looked down at the folder, his mind racing. She'll go to the board, he said grimly. We can defend ourselves. Aaliyah insisted. I'm a lawyer. I can help prove these old debts were never your doing. You can be honest with your board about your father's mistakes. Marcus's shoulders slumped. I spent my life building this company's reputation. I swore never to let emotion sway me, and now she's about to ruin everything, and not just for me, but for you, too. Aaliyah cupped his cheek. We'll face it together, she whispered. He stared into her eyes for a moment, then nodded. Together. They climbed into the car, soaked to the bone as lightning split the sky above them. They called an emergency board meeting the next morning. Aaliyah insisted on being there by Marcus's side, even if it was unusual for a spouse to sit in. Marcus's lead attorney also joined. The board members looked uneasy. Rumors had already started to spread that Paige was sending them shocking documents. Marcus stood at the head of the long table, Aaliyah to his left. He began with a calm statement. I learned last night that my late father left behind certain debts that were not fully disclosed. I should have made this public earlier, but I only discovered it after his death and managed it privately. I did not hide it for personal gain. I did so to protect the company from scandal, especially after Paige stole our patents and created more chaos. That was my error, and I own it. He paused, scanning the faces around the table. I will show full transparency from this moment on. We can open the books to any auditors you choose. This will not affect our current deals. A few members murmured, flipping through pages of documents. One man cleared his throat. The question, Marcus, is whether these hidden issues will bring more trouble in the future. Can we trust that you have told us everything? Aaliyah stepped forward. My name is Aaliyah Coleman Hale. I'm not just Marcus's wife, but also a lawyer with Anderson Boyd. I can assure you that an independent audit is already in progress. We will deliver the findings as soon as they are complete. Marcus did nothing illegal. This was an inherited debt from his father, and he tried to manage it responsibly. Marcus pressed his lips together, grateful for her support. I'm prepared to face any penalty the board thinks is fair, he said, but I won't allow blackmail to control our future. At that moment, the door swung open and Paige strolled in. A few board members frowned, while others exchanged looks. Paige had a confident smirk. I see you started without me, she said. Marcus glared. You're not a member of this board. No, but I have new information. She stepped forward, placing more documents on the table. This proves Marcus had knowledge of these debts far longer than he claims. He only came clean because I threatened to make it public. Aaliyah snatched the papers and scanned them quickly. They were old emails, some of which could be taken out of context to show Marcus covering up his father's debts. Her heart pounded. Would the board see the truth or believe Paige's twisted version? Paige continued. He swore off love, then suddenly married Miss Coleman. This entire relationship could be another cover-up. Is that the leader you trust? A man who hides the truth and fakes a romance to keep everyone calm. The board members murmured louder. Marcus clenched his fists, trying to stay calm. Aaliyah felt a wave of protectiveness for him. She stepped forward, her voice cutting through the chatter. Marcus did not marry me as a cover-up, she said firmly. Yes, it began as a business arrangement, but that changed. We have combined our companies, and we've grown to care about each other in ways that have nothing to do with blackmail or scandal. Paige snorted. So you expect them to believe that the man who made a public vow never to love again is suddenly in love? Sounds fake to me. The tension in the room was thick. Marcus took a deep breath. He turned to Aaliyah, and for a moment the rest of the room seemed to fade. He reached for her hand, and she gave it willingly. Then he addressed the board, his voice steady. I made mistakes. I let my father's debts remain hidden because I was ashamed. I didn't want more media attention after Paige's betrayal. But the truth is, I found something better than business alliances. Someone who helped me see the value of honesty and trust. Aaliyah showed me what it means to truly care about another person, not just about money or power. He glanced at his board members, his expression calm but passionate. I know this is hard to believe coming from me, but if you need proof that I've changed, look at my decisions in the last few months. I've expanded our philanthropic department, developed fairer policies for employees, and grown our connection to Coleman Shipping in ways that benefit both sides. I have faced plenty of doubts, but with Aaliyah's help, we're thriving. Silence fell. Aaliyah squeezed his hand. Paige's sneer wavered slightly, as if she saw something in Marcus that she didn't recognize, a man who was no longer cowering behind walls. Finally, the board's chairperson spoke. We will accept your offer to have an independent audit, Marcus. We will review everything carefully. If we find no wrongdoing beyond unintentional delays in disclosing inherited debts, you will remain CEO, but understand that trust is fragile. Marcus nodded. I understand. Paige opened her mouth to argue, but the chairperson shook his head. We've heard enough, Miss Whitaker. Unless you have new information, this meeting is over. Paige glared. You're making a mistake. Marcus met her gaze. No, the only mistake I made was trusting you once upon a time. Her eyes flickered with anger, but she turned and stalked out, slamming the door behind her. The board dispersed soon after, leaving Marcus and Aaliyah alone in the big, quiet room. He exhaled shakily, looking drained but relieved. "Thank you," he said to her, pulling her into a gentle hug. "I couldn't have done this without you." She rested her head on his shoulder. "We'll get through the audit," she said, voice soft, "and everything else that comes our way." Outside, the storm clouds parted. Sunlight streamed through the windows, as if nature itself approved of the turn of events. Over the following weeks, the audit took place. Aaliyah worked closely with the auditors, providing all the necessary files. Marcus gave them access to every account, determined to be fully honest now that the truth was out. The tension was high, but slowly they began to see signs that the board would accept the outcome. During this time, Marcus and Aaliyah's marriage felt more real than ever. They stayed up late discussing their plans for the future of both companies. They woke up early to share coffee, exchanging small smiles that felt strangely intimate. They still had separate bedrooms, but each night Marcus lingered at her door with a question in his eyes. Eventually, Aaliyah let him in, and they fell asleep holding each other, no longer pretending their feelings were not real. One Sunday morning, after nearly a month of waiting, the results of the audit came in. Aaliyah read through them first, letting out a cry of relief. "Marcus, look." They found no evidence of intentional wrongdoing. They concluded it was a delayed disclosure of old family debts, but there was no crime committed. Marcus's eyes closed briefly, as if a giant weight had lifted. He pulled her into his arms, hugging her tight. "We did it," he whispered. She laughed, a mix of tears and happiness. "Yes, we did." It meant his position at Hale Innovations was safe. It meant Coleman Shipping could continue prospering, and it meant Page's attempt to destroy him had failed. That night, they decided to celebrate in the penthouse. Marcus ordered a lavish dinner. They ate by candlelight, just the two of them, with the city sprawled out beneath their windows. As the meal ended, Marcus stood and walked around the table, taking Aaliyah's hand. "I have something to say," he told her, his voice a bit shaky. She looked up at him. "When we started this marriage, I never wanted to feel anything again. I wanted a deal that would benefit us both with no strings attached." Aaliyah searched his face. "I know." He squeezed her hand. "But I fell for you, Aaliyah, hard. I tried to fight it. I told myself it was just business or just comfort or just passion. But it's love. I'm in love with you." She felt tears warm her eyes. "Marcus." He shook his head, placing a finger over her lips. "Let me finish. I love how strong you are, how you stand up for me, how you never back down when something is worth fighting for. I love your intelligence, your kindness, and your determination to save your family's company, most of all. I love that you gave me a chance even when I tried to push you away." Tears slipped down her cheeks. She opened her mouth, but she couldn't speak for a moment. Then she managed. "I love you too. I tried to ignore it, but I can't. You mean more to me than I ever thought possible." He leaned in, brushing his lips over hers. It started gentle, but soon grew into a deep, soul-stirring kiss. When they pulled apart, both were breathless. "Stay with me," Marcus whispered. "For real, no more separate rooms, no more pretending. Let's make this marriage a real partnership in every sense." Aaliyah nodded, fresh tears falling. "Yes," she whispered, "I want that too." They embraced, holding each other as though the future had opened like a wide, bright sky after a storm. And it had. For the first time in a long while, both of them believed that true love was possible. A week after the board accepted the audit results, Marcus arranged a private ceremony on the rooftop garden of his building. There were only a few guests: Aaliyah's parents, some close friends, and Marcus's most trusted colleagues. No media, no grand displays. This time it was about them. Aaliyah wore a simple white dress, and Marcus wore a dark suit without a tie. The evening sky was painted with shades of pink and orange. A small arch was set up with flowers, and the city skyline glowed behind them. They held hands as they exchanged renewed vows. This time, there was no talk of business. Instead, they spoke from the heart. Aaliyah, Marcus said, voice tender, I promise to stand by you, protect you, and support your dreams. You showed me that love isn't a weakness. It's a strength we can share. She blinked back tears. Marcus, I promise to be honest, loyal, and brave with you. I promise to meet every challenge with you by my side, and to believe in the goodness of what we have. When they kissed, cheers rose from their loved ones. Aaliyah's mother wept openly, and her father beamed. Marcus's top executives, who had never seen him show affection, clapped with genuine smiles. It was a quiet moment, but it carried more meaning than their first wedding ever could. Afterward, they cut a small cake and toasted with champagne. Marcus pulled Aaliyah aside to a spot overlooking the city lights. We made it through storms, scandals, and heartbreak, he said, lifting his glass. She clinked her glass against his. And we came out stronger together. He paused, gazing into her eyes. I don't regret any of it, as long as it led me to you. Aaliyah felt her heart swell. Me neither. They kissed under the endless sky, the sound of traffic far below blending with the laughter of their small group. This time there was no doubt they were truly husband and wife, bound not by a contract or an arrangement, but by love. 2 months later, everything seemed perfect. Coleman Shipping and Hale Innovations announced a joint venture to expand into new territories, bringing cutting-edge technology to manage shipping lanes around the world. The media praised them as a power couple who balanced each other perfectly. Yet there was one last piece of suspense. Paige, who had gone quiet for several weeks, suddenly leaked rumors that she had one more secret about Marcus. It caused a stir online. Some wondered if Paige would finally reveal something damaging enough to topple him. Aaliyah found herself tense again. Marcus tried to appear unconcerned, but she saw his worry. Still they waited. Then a week passed. 2 weeks. A month. Nothing happened. Paige had either been bluffing, or she found no willing audience for her tricks. The rumor fizzled. No secret ever emerged. Early on a bright Saturday morning, Aaliyah woke in Marcus's arms. The sun filtered through the curtains, warming the room. She felt him stir beside her. She turned to find him watching her with a soft smile. Morning, he said. Good morning, she replied. He brushed a thumb across her cheek. We made it, didn't we? Past all the lies and fears. She nodded, leaning in for a gentle kiss. We did. Any regrets? He asked, a note of uncertainty in his voice. None, she said, not a single one. He exhaled, relieved. Then let's get up. We have a lot of living to do. She laughed, pushing back the covers. They had faced storms, betrayal, and corporate battles. But they had found something stronger than all of it, a real connection built on trust and love. As they stepped onto the penthouse balcony into the sunshine, Aaliyah and Marcus looked out at the city that had tested them in so many ways. They felt gratitude for every trial, every tear, because each had brought them closer. A gentle breeze ruffled their hair, and she slipped her arm around his waist. He kissed her temple. I love you, Mrs. Hale. She smiled, eyes shining. I love you too, Mr. Hale. And so began the next chapter of their lives, a chapter where the millionaire who swore against love finally found what he had denied himself for so long. It was a simple truth, free of fancy words. Sometimes love is worth every risk. And in the end, it brings a happiness that no contract or vow of solitude could ever match. They stood there side by side, hearts full, ready for whatever came next.